Welcome to Crossfire Debates, our weekly program dedicated to dissecting today's most pressing issues. Tonight, we delve into a question that touches our plates, our planet, and our principles. Is vegetarianism or veganism ethically or environmentally necessary? It's a topic generating considerable discussion globally, with strong arguments on all sides. Joining us are two distinguished guests, Mr. Liam Chen, an environmental scientist and ethicist who will argue for the necessity of plant-based diets, and Ms. Olivia Walker, a nutritionist and food systems analyst who offers a more skeptical view, suggesting alternative sustainable approaches. We'll begin with opening statements, followed by moderated discussion and rebuttals, and conclude with closing remarks. Our aim is a robust and respectful exchange of ideas.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes. The question before us isn't merely about dietary preference. It's a profound ethical and ecological imperative. From an ethical standpoint, we must confront the reality of industrial animal agriculture. This system, driven by profit, subjects billions of sentient beings to conditions that can only be described as torturous: confinement, mutilation, and a brutal end. These animals experience pain, fear, and distress, much like we do. To willingly participate in and perpetuate this suffering, when viable alternatives exist, raises serious moral questions about our compassion and our consistency in applying ethical principles. Environmentally, the case is equally stark. Animal agriculture is a leading driver of deforestation, clearing vast swaths of land for pasture and feed crops, which contributes significantly to biodiversity loss. It's responsible for an enormous share of global greenhouse gas emissions, notably methane from livestock, which is a far more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide in the short term. Furthermore, the water footprint of meat and dairy production is staggering, consuming precious freshwater resources at an unsustainable rate, especially when compared to plant-based food production. Considering these intertwined ethical and environmental crises, a significant global shift towards vegetarianism, and ideally veganism, is not just a commendable lifestyle choice. It is, I contend, a fundamental necessity for the well-being of animals, the health of our planet, and indeed, for a sustainable human future.
Thank you, Dr. Hayes and Mr. Chen. I certainly share the deep concerns regarding the practices and impacts of industrial animal agriculture. There's no denying its significant ethical and environmental failings. However, to frame vegetarianism or veganism as an absolute, universal necessity might be an oversimplification of a highly complex global food system. Ethically, the necessity argument needs careful examination. For certain populations, particularly in developing regions, or those with specific nutritional needs, access to nutrient-dense animal products can be crucial for health and development, and purely plant-based diets may present significant challenges in terms of nutrient adequacy or affordability. Moreover, not all animal rearing is ethically equivalent to factory farming. Sustainable, humane animal husbandry, where animals are raised with high welfare standards and contribute to ecological balance, presents a different ethical paradigm than industrial confinement. Environmentally, while industrial meat production is undeniably damaging, it's also true that not all plant-based agriculture is inherently benign. Large-scale monoculture farming for certain vegan staples can lead to soil degradation, biodiversity loss, and high water use. Conversely, well-managed livestock and regenerative agriculture systems can play a positive role in soil health, carbon sequestration, and maintaining grassland ecosystems. Therefore, I propose we look beyond a binary choice. Instead of declaring universal veganism a necessity, we should focus on promoting a spectrum of sustainable and ethical food systems, which might include mindfully produced animal products for those who choose or need them, alongside a significant reduction in overconsumption of industrially produced meat.
Thank you both for those comprehensive opening statements. Mr. Chen, Ms. Walker raises important points about the nutritional accessibility of vegan diets globally and the existence of sustainable livestock practices. How do you respond to the idea that a shift towards such improved practices rather than a widespread adoption of veganism could be a more practical and globally adaptable solution?
While I acknowledge that, quote, sustainable livestock sounds appealing, and improvements in animal welfare are always welcome, the fundamental issue is one of scale and inherent inefficiency. Even the most sustainable meat production requires significantly more land, water, and energy per calorie or gram of protein than plant-based alternatives. Given a global population approaching 10 billion, relying on even quote meat to feed everyone sustainably is a mathematical improbability without catastrophic environmental consequences. Regarding nutritional accessibility, well-planned vegan diets can meet all nutritional requirements for all stages of life, as affirmed by major dietetic associations. The challenge is often education and access to diverse plant foods, not an inherent flaw in veganism itself. The urgency of climate change and biodiversity loss means we don't have the luxury of decades to perfect a niche market of, quote, sustainable meat. A widespread shift to plant-based diets offers the most immediate and impactful leverage we have.
Ms. Walker, Mr. Chen has strongly re-emphasized the severe environmental footprint and the core ethical questions surrounding any form of animal use for food, regardless of welfare improvements. Even with the sustainable alternatives you champion, can these realistically meet global food demand without significant environmental compromise? And do they truly resolve the fundamental ethical concerns about using animals as commodities?
Mr. Chen paints a picture where the only options are industrial meat or universal veganism, and I believe this is a false dichotomy. The scale of current overconsumption of meat, particularly in affluent nations, is indeed the primary driver of the negative impacts, not necessarily the consumption of animal products per se. A significant global reduction in meat intake, coupled with a transition to truly regenerative and integrated farming systems, could drastically lower the environmental burden. These systems often rely on animal integration for soil fertility and pest control, reducing the need for synthetic inputs common in some large-scale plant agriculture. Ethically, if animals are raised in systems that allow for natural behaviors, provide a good life and a humane death, and their existence contributes positively to the ecosystem, the ethical calculus changes for many people compared to factory farming. It's about responsible stewardship, not just abstention. The feasibility of global veganism also faces hurdles regarding cultural traditions, local food sovereignty, and the economic displacement of millions reliant on livestock. A multifaceted approach is more resilient.
Let's consider the socioeconomic dimensions more closely. Mr. Chen, for many communities globally, particularly in pastoral and developing regions, livestock is not just food, but central to their livelihood, culture, and economic stability. How can the arguments for widespread veganism, which you advocate as a necessity, realistically account for these deeply embedded socioeconomic realities without causing unintended harm or being perceived as culturally insensitive?
This is a crucial consideration, and the transition must be just and equitable. It's not about imposing a Western dietary model uniformly, but about supporting communities in shifting towards more sustainable livelihoods where possible. Investment in plant-based agriculture, development of alternative protein sources suitable for local contexts, and retraining programs can create new economic opportunities. We must acknowledge that climate change, driven partly by current livestock systems, already threatens these very livelihoods in the long term through desertification, water scarcity, and extreme weather. The argument isn't to abandon communities, but to empower them with alternatives that are both ecologically sound and economically viable for the future. In many cases, traditional, less intensive forms of animal husbandry have a much lower impact than industrial systems. But the global trend is unfortunately towards intensification. Ultimately, the environmental necessity will force changes. Proactive, supportive transitions are far preferable to reactive, crisis-driven ones.
Ms. Walker, turning to your perspective, while sustainable omnivorism and reduced meat consumption sound reasonable, How does this approach address the sheer scale of current global meat demand, which is projected to rise especially in developing economies? Can these sustainable, often more labor-intensive and land-extensive models truly scale up to make a significant dent in the global impact? Or do they risk remaining niche solutions while the industrial machine continues largely unabated?
The challenge of scale is undeniable, and it's why a multi-pronged strategy is essential. Firstly, a massive reduction in meat consumption in high-consuming nations is non-negotiable. This alone would free up immense resources. Secondly, sustainable models aren't necessarily about replicating current consumption levels with, quote, better meat. They are about integrating animal agriculture appropriately within diverse food systems, where animals utilize land unsuitable for cropping, recycle nutrients, and provide valuable products without the immense feed inputs of industrial systems. Regarding rising demand in developing economies, it's important to support pathways that avoid the pitfalls of Western industrial models. This means investing in local agroecological systems, promoting diverse traditional diets that often include moderate amounts of animal products, and ensuring food sovereignty. It's not about niche solutions, but about fostering a mosaic of regional food systems adapted to local conditions, rather than a one-size-fits-all global commodity market. This also involves policy changes, removing subsidies for industrial agriculture, and supporting sustainable alternatives. In summary, while the ethical and environmental problems of industrial meat production are severe, declaring universal vegetarianism or veganism an absolute necessity overlooks crucial complexities. Nutritional needs, cultural practices, socioeconomic realities, and the potential of well-managed, integrated animal agriculture all demand a more nuanced perspective. Our goal should be a global food system that is truly sustainable, ethical, and equitable. This involves significantly reducing meat overconsumption, especially of industrially produced meat, and championing diverse solutions. This includes regenerative agriculture, supporting local food economies, and respecting that for some, mindfully produced animal products can be part of an ethical and sustainable diet. Let's pursue progress through thoughtful dialogue and varied strategies, not through dogma.
Thank you. I must reiterate that from both an ethical and an environmental standpoint, the arguments for a decisive global shift towards plant-based diets are compelling and urgent. The sheer scale of animal suffering in current systems is a moral catastrophe we can choose to stop perpetuating. The immense environmental damage, deforestation, greenhouse gas emissions, water depletion caused by animal agriculture is pushing our planet to its limits. While transitions must be managed carefully, the potential positive impact of widespread adoption of vegetarianism or veganism on planetary health, biodiversity, and resource allocation is transformative. It represents one of the most powerful actions individuals and societies can take to address climate change and build a more compassionate world. The question isn't just about necessity, but about the kind of future we want to create.
We've heard powerful and deeply considered arguments from both Mr. Chen and Ms. Walker tonight, illuminating the multifaceted nature of this debate. Mr. Chen has emphasized the profound ethical and environmental imperatives he sees for a global move towards plant-based diets, highlighting issues of animal welfare and resource sustainability. Ms. Walker, while acknowledging problems with industrial systems, has argued for a more varied approach, stressing nutritional diversity, socioeconomic factors, and the potential of sustainable, integrated farming that may include animal products. Clearly, there are no easy answers, but the discussion has provided much food for thought. We thank our speakers for their insightful contributions to this important conversation, and we thank you, our audience, for joining us on Crossfire Debates. We encourage you to continue reflecting on the perspectives shared. Good evening.